everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Gold Table Talk. Today, we are joined by Savas Nicolaides, who is the principal of our Century 21 East Rand branches, and he's going to be talking to us about everything when it comes to renting versus buying. Welcome, Savas.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So, renting versus buying,
Wow.
what is it? What's the difference?
How long do I have?
As long as you'd like.
So, with regards to renting and buying, I think the tenant in the renting department or the buyer, as in buying, they don't actually have a choice. When you're considering renting something, it's because you don't have the financial means or the affordability to buy. So you're actually forced to actually consider renting at first. And I find that's the biggest difference. Young people, they want to get out the house. They don't have the financial means to actually buy something because it comes with many additional costs. They go for renting because that's all they can afford. So that for me is the biggest difference between one or the other. Someone who buys a property, they can afford it because they know it comes with transfer costs, moving costs, water and lights, rates and taxes, levies and sectional title. So they probably more financially sound than a tenant. That for me is the biggest difference.
So affordability, right?
Absolutely. It's affordability choice. I can afford to rent because I don't have a rates and taxes problem or levies in sectional title. I've got X amount of budget I can put into accommodation. That's what I can afford. So affordability is the main criteria why someone decides to rent other than buying.
I mean, on that topic though, do you not find that the younger generation, like I know globally, they're leaning towards renting a lot more than buying? Is that a trend that's moved into South Africa as well?
Yes, because the younger generation have just finished university or have found their first job. These salaries are not what it is when you're 10 years in the corporate world or in the working environment. So again, it's affordability thing. So we find that most of the tenants or the leases that we are managing are of the younger generation because they just don't have a choice to buy. So I think whatever is happening globally happens in the East Rand, and I'm sure the entire South Africa as well.
Back to the topic of renting versus buying. There are obviously, as you mentioned, it's a lot more affordable to rent, a lot more costs are not involved. But with buying, are there options for buyers, like first time buyers? Can they buy where there's no transfer duties involved?
Yes, there is. There's a threshold of 1.1 million rand. So if you are considering buying something, you can buy up to 1.1 million and not pay transfer duty, which is a cost that goes to the government, so to speak. So up to 1.1 million, you do not pay transfer duty, but there are transfer costs. In other words, the legal costs that go towards registering the property from the seller into your or the buyer's name. So you cannot get away with a cost expense to buy something. Okay. And that for me is we find that many people don't have that. I mean, we did a quote yesterday on a 700,000 Rand property, which is not much. It's a townhouse. The transfer costs, the actual invoice that we got from the conveyancers is 25,000 Rand. So if you buy something for 700,000, you need additional 25,000 Rand to get into your name. So most people, younger people that are just starting work and wanting to buy something, need an additional 25,000 to buy that 700,000 Rand property. No one's got that, at that age. So that is why, buyers tend to consider buying once they're financially sound. The affordability is much better. So, you can rent that same 700,000 Rand townhouse for 7,000 Rand a month. No transfer cost, nothing. Just an admin cost. We charge 2,000 Rand for the leasing administration process, which we do a credit check, etc., sign the lease. That's the only cost to the potential tenant to rent that 7,000 Rand unit. So it's quite a
Wow.
difference between I can rent something for 7,000 or to buy something for 700,000. It's
Yes,
quite a
of course. And
difference.
then your monthly payments differ as well when you're an owner and when you're a tenant, correct?
Correct. As a tenant, you just pay your rental and your utilities. And we say a rough figure 1% of the selling price of a townhouse or house, so 700,000. You should get about 7,000 rand, the landlord or the owner. But the owner has to pay the levies and the rates and taxes to that unit.
Yes.
The tenant doesn't pay that; he just pays his utilities. So
Wow.
you can already see the difference in the monthly cost to a tenant as opposed to an owner of a townhouse or home. It's two different things.
Absolutely. And, on social media, there's a lot of these groups and people complaining either as a tenant or as an owner. What rights are there legally where tenants are safeguarded as well as owners? Let's start with tenants.
With regards to,
To leasing a property from an owner,
okay,
especially from Century 21 East Rand, for instance, because you're getting a lot of lease agreements.
yeah.
And how does the agency then protect the tenant in that regard?
Well, we first of all we vet the tenant. We do credit checks with their consent. We confirm the employment, and once we satisfy that the tenant does qualify, we present the potential tenant to the landlord. Once the landlord decides this is the tenant for me, we sign a lease document. Thereafter, we manage it on a monthly basis on behalf of the landlord, but also the tenant in actual fact. And what we do is really collect the rental from the tenant. If there's any maintenance issues, we follow that up on a monthly basis. There's nothing else to protect the tenant but pay your rental, pay it on time, and you'll be fine. The landlord also, from his point of view, he just wants his rental. He
Yeah.
wants it timeously because he probably has a bond to pay. So we make sure that we tie those two payments up towards the end of the month and the first 3 days of the following month. So, the tenant has got no real right. We do find we've had one or two occasions where the landlord has failed to pay his rates and taxes bill 2, 3, 4 months.
Sure.
And then the council disconnects the,
Utilities.
whatever.
Yeah.
Then what the tenant is in a bit of a situation because now he's paying his rental timeously. The landlord hasn't paid his rates and taxes bill. It's not his fault. What I have done in those occasions, I've literally taken the deposit that we keep on behalf of the landlord. I've taken that deposit to pay the council to get the electricity back up and running, so they could have electricity.
Mm.
And then we obviously advise the landlord, you cannot not pay your end of the commitment, the rates and taxes. You need to pay that because the tenant cannot live in the dark. So we protect the tenant in that way and we replace the deposit from the landlord.
I mean, that's great because I would feel that, working with an agency involved would protect both owner and tenant, as you've explained. What's the process of somebody getting a lease agreement through Century 21 East Rand?
Well, again, we have a dedicated rental department with rental agents. And once we have located a potential tenant, as I mentioned, we do the necessary checks and balances, and we assist the tenant in getting them into their property by means of the documentation. And a lot of these tenants do not know the meaning of certain clauses, and we assist them. We advise them, and we guide them as what is required from you. And we assist them in signing the lease document. From there on, it's just assisting them for maintaining their credit scores by paying the rental timeously, and it's really assisting them with that. Keep your rental paid on time, and you'll be fine.
And I mean, you've had many years, you're an expert in the industry.
I'm not sure if I'm an expert, but
I've worked with you, you are. So tell me, from your professional opinion, what do you think is better? Do you think it's better to, if you have the money, to actually buy a property rather than rent?
wow, that's an excellent question. You said if you have the money.
Yes.
Okay, well, being a property person myself and invested in many properties in my life, it's a unanimous rather buy.
Is it?
Absolutely. And why do I say that? Well, you said if you financially sound, if it's for your own accommodation, and you're financially sound, I would recommend buying. Why? Well, because you actually have an asset that you're paying off on a monthly, yearly basis. It should escalate if you bought in the right area every year. So after 5, 10 years, depending on how long you are in there, you've built yourself an asset product, a fixed property that adds to the value of your life, or you could sell it and make a profit and buy something bigger. Whereas if you had that money, as you mentioned, and you rent something, every month you're paying a rental and it's just going to someone else. And what do you have at the end of the month, end of the year to show for? Nothing. You've just paid someone else's finance bond off. And so, yeah, that for me is I cannot understand why people who can afford to buy don't buy. I don't get that.
I completely understand. Um, as somebody who's bought like in my 20s and now later on, without mentioning my age, I realized that there's a big difference in what I look for. Obviously, affordability plays a role
Yeah.
in that. Do you advise people coming in to when they first home buyers to come in
Yes.
and assist them?
Buyers, eh?
Yes.
Definitely. Our business is built on referrals. We want to sell that young couple your first house or townhouse. And after 5, 6, 7 years, we want to be the ones selling that house again. So we do assist them getting into the market because many people, like you say, do not know how to buy. So we guide them. In fact, we have an in-house bond originator who will do a pre-approval on the couple. Say, right, you want to buy, and what can you buy for? So we help them and say, we'll look at your salaries, we do analysis, and we say you can buy for up to X amount, say R1 million. Once we establish what they can buy for, we show them what we have. We show them, where do they want to buy? Is close to their work, etc., schools, whatever it is. We show them what we have. We explain to them what the buying process is. Because they've never bought before. Hence why I believe that first-time buyers or any buyers and sellers need a professional property agent to assist them in the process. So these first-time buyers, we hold their hands. We show them what it takes, how to sign the contract, because they've never signed the 10-page offer to purchase. We go through each clause. We explain to them the breach clause. We explain to them how long it takes to get finance, who will be responsible to apply for finance, what is a conveyancer, what is their job, what is a conveyancer's duty in the process of selling the property. So by the time we're done with them and the agreement is signed and bonds approved, they pretty much know, what the process is. Then when it's close to registration, which takes normally 2 to 3 months, they get informed on a weekly basis.
Wow.
Hey, your property is 2 weeks away from registration, which is basically changing owners from a seller to your name. They understand what that is. And we give them a notification weekly. You're a week away from ownership. Get your moving company together, whatever it is. And the exciting part in every handover is our agents are present. We make a thing of it. Here's the keys. Welcome to your home. We've got many happy moments where the agents have taken pictures and gifts and whatever, and it's an exciting process for that first time property owner. So that process, we definitely help them to
I
that.
love
To that.
that.
Yeah,
You guys exceed expectations,
it's
really.
special.
It is special. I mean, it's the biggest asset in somebody's life,
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a moment that is cherished when you get the keys to your first home. So we tend to help them along the way. We at the office, I follow up with an email a few days after registration to both the seller and the buyer, thanking them for their business, etc. If there's anything they would need, they can contact me directly. So we try and keep them amongst the Century 21 brand.
And now I want to move a bit towards the negative side of buying a property. So what happens? Have you had any like instances where people come back and they say, I'm not happy with this property I bought? Or is it because you've done so diligently the process of finding them the perfect property that you haven't had that experience? And if you have had certain experiences like that, what's it been like? Can a person go back on their decision?
Once an offer is signed, you know, we've had one or two occasions in the 11 years I've been with Century 21. I mean, a handful of occasions, let's just say after registration, the new owners move in. After a week, a month, or whatever, there's something wrong. You know, we try and assist them. It could be something that can be sorted out. Um, in fact, we've had a recent registration about 2 months ago, beginning of this year, where the new owner moved in and she realized there wasn't hot water on an extension. There was an extension to the house. There wasn't hot water in the one guest loo downstairs. I looked at this deal and I called the agent in, and we have what we call a mandatory disclosure form, which the seller has to sign that when we list the property, notifying us any problems, any latent or patent defects, anything that we should know. Because we as the agent do not know the house, only
Yes.
when we start listing it. So we ask pertinent questions that we guided on that form to make sure that we know that the house is solid, or whatever problems are, it's on that form. So I called the agent in and I looked at that form, and it stated there on the form that there is no hot water in this extension. Okay. The new owner wasn't happy with that after registration and contacted me and said, but you know, no hot water or no hot pipe is two different things. I said, you're quite correct. If there's no hot water, why is there no hot water? But if there's no hot pipe from the geyser, that's two different things. You agree?
Mm-hmm.
I called the agent in further, and we looked at her WhatsApp communication with the potential buyer at that time. And she advised this potential buyer that there is no pipes leading from the geyser to that extension. So we were in the clear, so to speak. You understand that? So my agents are taught to be very cautious about things like that. And hence the seller, I would say, tried, but didn't get it right, because when we showed her that you informed, she was okay with it.
Yes.
So, that's like a recent incident, but it's minuscule like that. We haven't had people who bought something that, I'm sorry I bought this. I actually can't recall any major problems apart from a leaking tap, or, the certificate of compliance certificate. This plug is tripping continuously. We try and fix it. We call the seller and say, look, the guy's just moved in. This plug is tripping. Can you send your electrician and have a look, because it could be something? So we try and keep it going for a couple of weeks within reason,
Yes.
and we make sure that all parties are satisfied.
And on that note, what other mistakes are there that first-time home buyers make when going through this process? Because we've spoken about the fact that, a lot of us come in ignorant about it. We don't do our homework. What, in your expertise, would you advise for the first-time buyers to look out for by priority?
It's a very simple answer. Seek out a professional agent. It really is as simple as that. Because they've never bought, they need to find a professional that can assist them. So they shouldn't make a mistake without someone assisting them. Really, they shouldn't. The mistake they make is choosing someone that's not a professional. I can be as blunt as that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I cannot think of my head. There's no other mistake if you're dealing with someone. I mean, we often see in our industry um, private sellers. Let's turn the table onto sellers. They don't need agents, according to some sellers. I can sell my house privately. I don't need an estate agent and pay them commission. We tell those sellers, hey, Mr. Seller, you might be able to sell your house privately without an agent. But unfortunately, in the majority of the instances, the buyer needs us, because the buyer does not have the experience of selling, needs the assistance that I spoke about. So, that is why a reputable agency, an agent, helps people along the way if they're in it for the long haul, which we tend to think we are.
And can buyers protect themselves with asking the right questions to the real estate agent they work with?
Yes, they can. There's a thing, patent and latent defects. That used to be a problem in the past, but because they didn't know. I mean, how does a 21-year-old know what a patent and latent defect is? But this form that I alluded to earlier on, the mandatory disclosure form, has all the questions in there that both the buyer and the seller have to sign and read and sign, which protects them from questions they didn't know to ask. It's all in that form. So they are actually, I think in South Africa, our industry is very well protected from both instances for the seller, buyer, even landlords and tenants. We actually have, it's quite unique. I'm not, I've heard horror stories, but in South Africa, I think we run, the industry is well regulated, sometimes over regulated, but I think generally, you cannot trade without a fidelity fund certificate as an estate agent or
Yes.
property practitioner. So we are regulated, and that's good for everybody.
So, Savas, tell us what are the highlights of a successful renting or buying journey that a person can take?
Well, it's a basically two-pronged answer to that question, and I can give you actual examples of buyers that over time, friends of mine, in fact, two particular friends, um, came to me. The one came to me about 10 years ago and said to me, he wants to get into property. How does he do it? He wants to buy to let, and he's got his core business, and what do I do and how do I do it?
Mm.
Um, Today he has 12 properties, okay, all rented out whilst he has his core business. He's sitting with 12 properties, and about a year ago, he actually called me in a frenzy, and I said to him, calm down. I'm not going to say his name. What's the problem? No, I just got a tax declaration. I've got to pay tax, profit tax on because we registered everything in one company. So I said to him, but that's amazing. That's like 9 years into your investment portfolio. Now you're starting to show profits. Pay the tax with a smile, because isn't that your end goal, to make profit? So, that's a good success story. You know, you got your core business, you bought a property, you're on 12 properties, you're building a portfolio. When he reaches 50, 55 years old, if he stops today, he's got 12 properties. It'll give him a passive income for the rest of his life. Doesn't need to work. Second example, my banker, who's an employee in the bank, has got 4 properties, 4 townhouses, all 4 rented out. Same kind of a concept. He's building himself a property base of an asset you cannot take away. It's going to be there for life, collecting rental. All he has to do, or they have to do, is service the bond till they get paid off. So for me, I've done that myself personally, is ownership of property for the long haul is the way to go. That's my belief.
So you've heard it here. If you are looking for a property, whether to buy or rent or build a property portfolio even, you are coming to the right place at Century 21 East Rand with the business owner and principal, Savas Nicolaides. Thank you so much for joining me today on Gold Table Talk.
Thank you for your time, and I'm no expert, but we've been in the business for a long time and we've learned something as well.
I beg to differ. Absolute expert in the industry. So again, if you're looking for a property, visit our website at www.century21.coza, and you can visit the East Rand page via our website.